In 2008, audiences witnessed a performance that redefined villainy in modern cinema.
I locked myself away for 6 weeks in a room, and I kind of came up with this creep.
Yeah, and it felt like that on set too. You were like, whoa, okay, you're on a whole nother level.
Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight wasn't just a character, it was a transformation.
Heath's performance, yeah, it's quite, psychologically, it's quite terrifying. And it's a very hard thing to do, I think. He's pulled it off. It's arguably one of the great movie villains.
But behind the chaotic laughter and smudged makeup was a meticulous artist, locked in a room for 6 weeks, conjuring a madman.
Heath Ledger, who plays this homicidal, psychopathic murderer. And he gets a lot of humor out of his part.
And, Heath completely immersed himself in that. And it's very easy every time you're working with somebody who really jumps fully into a character in the way that I like to as well. I get great satisfaction from working with them.
Welcome to Cinema Fever, where we celebrate the art of filmmaking, from hidden gems to legendary performances. If you're enjoying this video, help us out with a quick like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's get back to the story. When Christopher Nolan set out to reimagine Gotham, the stakes were already sky high. But when he reached out to Ledger about playing the Joker, the response was instant. Absolutely, Heath said. No hesitation, no conditions. He knew exactly what he wanted to do.
I've said this before, but if Tim Burton was doing The Dark Knight and asked me to play the Joker, I wouldn't have taken it, because to try and even to touch what Jack Nicholson did in Tim Burton's world would be a crime. And so
Heath was somebody I'd met with over the years for different roles. Indeed, I'd met him for Batman at the same time as I met every actor in town. He explained why he didn't want to do something like that. He was very polite about it, but very clear.
I never grew up reading Batman. But I really love Batman Begins, and the Joker, the character of the Joker, was just too good to turn down.
Ledger didn't just audition, he envisioned. He asked for the meeting, flew out to meet Nolan, and arrived with the seed of an idea. A version of the Joker that would soon become unforgettable.
I called Heath and I said, this is what's happening. They're putting together the next Batman film, and the Joker's going to be the villain, and is out of interest. And I remember him, it was like, there was no pause. It was like, absolutely, I want that. How do I, what do we do? I'll get on a plane, I'll fly out. I want to meet with Chris, can you get me in a room with Chris Nolan?
I'd already seen this world he'd created in Batman Begins, and so I knew there was an opportunity for a new version of the Joker, and that excited me, and I also knew instantly what to do.
And so I was sort of surprised to get the call, because it really more came from his end about wanting to get involved, wanting to talk to me about what we would be doing. I sat down with him for a couple of hours, with nothing for him to read, but we saw absolutely eye to eye on the bigger picture idea of who this guy was going to be.
Together, Nolan and Ledger built a blueprint, not just for a villain, but for an ideology. They studied anarchists, deviant psychology, and abstract art. Heath wasn't playing a comic book character. He was channeling chaos, philosophically, physically, and emotionally.
We talked about common reference points. We talked about Malcolm McDowell's performance of Clockwork Orange in the film. We talked about Clockwork Orange, the book, and who Alex is in the book is kind of different. We looked at paintings by Francis Bacon, visual reference. We looked at all kinds of things, talked about all kinds of different philosophical ideas behind the Joker and anarchy and chaos and what he would represent. And Heath was just ready to do it. He was ready to do something that big.
When Chris came to me, and I knew how Chris was, he'd already set up the world for me. I'd seen what world it was that I would be playing in. So I knew it was open for a fresh interpretation, and I also instantly kind of had something up my sleeve. which happened to be exactly what Chris was kind of looking for. And we sat down and kind of shared ideas, and they were the same. And so we just went with it.
I'll settle for a loved one.
So after that first meeting, it was very clear to me that it was going to be an incredibly exciting road to go down. I went through the process of deal making and announcing and everything. I think the whole world turned around to, what do you do? Heath Ledger, Joker, didn't make any sense to people at all.
From Bill Wyman's swagger to Iggy Pop's edge, Ledger wove a tapestry of influences into a single, unpredictable force. And when it came to costume and makeup, Heath wanted full control.
Finding posture, finding stance, finding his voice is very important, because when you find the voice, you find the breath within the voice.
How do you tackle that? Like, without just doing a version of Jack? And I suddenly hear, do you want to know how I got these scars? I'm like, I look at him and he's kind of walking, holding his shirt. And he's like, my daddy was a drinker, the fiend. And he gives me this look, and man, goosebumps, chills run down me. And he does that little monologue for me. Woo! Yell it out. I'm punching him in the chest. And he's like, don't tell anyone.
He insisted on doing the makeup himself, because in Heath's mind, the Joker wasn't theatrical. He was a man who smeared on his persona with bare hands. Makeup stained his fingertips, lingered under his nails, just as the Joker's madness lingered in Ledger's bones. The quirks you remember, lip-licking, erratic eye movements, that chilling laughter, weren't scripted. They were symptoms of a character that had taken on a life of its own.
One thing Heath wanted to do was to apply the makeup himself. As an actor, he's saying, okay, this character would put his own makeup on, in real life. And so what would that look like if it just got the makeup? The thing that stuck from that is he always had makeup on his fingers and under his fingernails and everything, as he would have from putting it on just with his hands.
That's another trademark of the actor that Heath had become. He was able to chuck his vanity, and I think his conception of the Joker did show him kind of warts and all. And he did it on his own in the makeup trailer. And it was very simple. All it was just like a wash of white pancake makeup and some smear of red lips.
The prosthetics came up onto the lip and feathered onto the lip. So it was almost halfway into the mouth. And of course, when you speak, the feathering of the prosthetics became loosened. The last thing Heath wanted to do is to go back and spend another 20 minutes or half an hour trying to get the lips glued back again. So he licked his lips a lot. And then slowly that became a part of the character.
During the hair and makeup tests, we let him perform. We let him talk, we let him walk around. We didn't record any sound, but we let him inhabit the character and use it as a bit of a test bed to just sort of do it in front of a few people and start to feel what that would be and move around. We had some props there. We had different knives and things for him to pick up and start moving with and seeing how that would work. And it was a really, amazing experience to be a part of, to see him developing something in that way.
And so Heath and I were in the same trailer coming up with our looks, So I would be working on Two-Face over here, and Heath would be on the other side of the trailer with his makeup man, and they would be, Heath would be going, making noises from the other side of the room, like this, and I would look over, and he's coming up with his makeup, which I thought was real special, and then we would talk about it and that sort of thing.
We didn't have that moment on Heath where we just sort of, made him dress up as the Joker and suddenly he's the Joker. That would have felt very artificial. And so he developed the look of the character with Lindy having the costume design and with John Caglione at the makeup and myself over a long period of time. So we would experiment with pieces of it. What would the shoes be? I think the shoes were actually the first thing that Lindy found that Heath was like, no, those are exactly the right shoes.
This wall is the sort of conglomeration of all the images that we started out with. I wrote there Terence Stamp, Bill Wyman, Iggy Pop, Adam Ant, Keith Richards. This is a sort of, like an amalgam of shirt fabrics and ties. Everything was a little bit of edge and a bit of jagginess. And these are his color, different colors kind of safely going towards a really black purple and then thinking, no, we've got to do it. Come back here to the purple, you know. And this is a panel of the final decided fabrics and colors.
He felt for the first time as an actor that he was like, I'm untouchable. Like every scene I do with any other actor, it doesn't matter how amazing they are, I'm controlling and leading these scenes. He was so confident and he was so proud of that role. He was really excited for that film to come out. It was the first time I'd heard him in a long time being excited about like this role I've nailed.
But just from what I've seen, like firsthand, and just from what I hear, I think it's going to be good.
On set, Ledger didn't just perform, he commanded. Even his co-stars were awed. Aaron Eckhart recalls Ledger's quiet intensity, circling the hospital bed for nearly an hour before speaking a word.
Our scene together in the hospital bed, which was really my only scene with him, and it was, I was in the hospital bed that day, and I thought, well, I don't really have any lines. What am I going to do? And I had no idea what was going to happen. And so I got in the bed, and they were lighting, and Chris was walking around and doing things, and then Heath came around, and Heath was always in character.
Hi.
So he would come around and, be talking to himself in the corner, like this. And then he would come up, I was laying there, and I was watching him the whole time. And he came up and would walk around me like this. And I would watch him, and I would watch him. He'd walk around the hospital bed like this. I'd watch him. Didn't say anything for maybe an hour. He would walk around. And then we'd watch him, and then he'd start saying his lines. And I would watch him, watch him come around the bed like this. And then all of a sudden my hand would go up like this. And he caught my hand.
Just did what I do best. I took your little plan and I turned it on itself.
So we just went through this organic process of developing this scene, which was really nothing. And then when we came time to shoot, we had this thing beautifully choreographed. And, we never said a word to each other.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it was a long day. And we walked out back to our trailers, and Heath was here, and I was walking, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, "That's what acting's all about."
You change things forever.
Every movement was calculated, every silence deafening. And yet, off camera, he laughed, joked, shared smiles. Heath could switch it off. He wasn't possessed, he was in control. But when the cameras rolled, the Joker took over.
When he wasn't working, he would come to set and observe and watch Chris because he was so enamored with, Chris as a director and wanted to learn as much as he could about what he was building and what he was doing.
The performance was magnetic. Whether throwing Rachel from a rooftop or facing Batman under blinding lights, Ledger's Joker was never just a villain. He was a mirror, reflecting society's fragility, its fear of unpredictability. Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Aaron Eckhart, all remember the electricity, a presence so strong that even in silence, Ledger's Joker filled the frame.
You knew on the set, and that's not to say that's not buying into, I know the gossip and the rumours and things that he was so into the role and all the rest of it. And the guy I experienced was someone who was, very focused, very committed, but could switch off and have a laugh in between takes and, but in the work, it was quite something to be in the room with.
Heath played that, beautifully. I enjoyed very much actually our very first scene together in that interrogation room, as I'd said, because it was the first time I got to see, what Heath was really going to do, and enjoyed it very much. Despite the rage and everything that Batman was displaying in that scene, I actually, in between takes, I was laughing my head off because I was liking how much it seemed to be working between us. And Heath also, you could see how much glee and delight he got from playing this character. He really got satisfaction out of it.
A lot of people like to think that it was a strenuous process for him. But he would come off the set and we'd chat and we'd have a laugh and joke, and we had more fun than was respectable for hardworking artists.
He turns to me and he says, "Why so serious?"
One of the funniest things he did for me was he plays this nutcase with this funny makeup, this weird makeup. And then he sees Maggie Gyllenhaal, and it's like this beautiful woman. And he has this very long hair. And he goes, beautiful woman. And he brushes his hair back as a masculine gesture, but it's very feminine. It's quite weird, and it gets a laugh. It's good. It's very funny, but it's so unexpected. And he gets quite a few laughs, considering he's playing, to my mind, one of the greatest villains in movie history. I'm talking about not Batman, movie history. He's straight up there with Tony Hopkins and Hannibal Lecter, or with Jack, with the original Joker, Nicholson.
When we were shooting the scene in where he comes into the party, there was a crowd that side of the camera and this side of the camera. It was a very large crowd, so he didn't expect it to be so big. He said, "This feels like walking onto a stage. I wasn't prepared for so many people. How do I play this?" And I said, well, you're a psychopath. So they're your toys. You play with your toys.
You know where Harvey is? You know who he is?
I remember coming to work and seeing him, that scene where the Joker throws me off a roof, seeing him come in and start to do what he was doing, which was the first time I saw it. And I thought, and I still think about this sometimes, it's so hard to be good in a huge movie like that. That's not about the acting, really. It's so much easier to be good in like a little tiny movie where, it's all about you. To be amazing like the way Heath was in a movie that's got explosions and like huge stunt scenes and big sets is like a whole nother thing. And I don't know if anyone's ever done that as well as he did in The Dark Knight.
I never have a scene directly with him, but what he does do in the movie, Batman and I are giving a party and he gate crashes it. So I was in the scene, but not, I had different dialogue with other people, but not with him. He never ever spoke to me in the scene. But I was on the set with him for 3 days, and I got to know him. But what surprised me was I was on the set with him, talking to him before he did the first take that I ever saw, and I didn't know what was coming. And so what happens is he gets in the elevator, goes down, and then the elevator comes up, and he bursts into our party, which is the first time I ever saw the Joker as such. And I thought it was stunning right from then. I mean, I praise him high heaven all over the place. I think he's going to get an Oscar nomination, probably get the Oscar. But this is not based on him dying or anything like that. I was saying this, and so were the unit from the first day. It wasn't his first day, my first day with him. I mean, I don't know him very well. I just had sort of on the set chats for 2 days. I'd never met him before. But he was a lovely, but very, very quiet.
Ledger's Joker wasn't just a role. It became cinema's gold standard for villainy. And when the film released, the world saw what his peers already knew. His posthumous Oscar wasn't a tribute to tragedy. It was recognition of mastery. Heath Ledger gave everything to the role, but not out of torment. He loved the work. He lived for the challenge. The Dark Knight was his playground, and the Joker, his masterpiece.
He knew that he had something that was amazing. He put all this work into it, and he was actually enjoying the work. Everyone, every sound technician, every producer was floored by what he was doing in The Dark Knight. People would be scurrying up to screens, trying to get glimpses on set, just because they knew when he was on, it was on.
It was the most fun I've had with a character, hands down. Creatively, it was just, it was too good to be true. It was hard stamina-wise, because it was just high levels of energy were required every day. But it was incredibly enjoyable. Yeah.
And the Oscar goes to Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight.
In a genre built on heroes, Heath Ledger reminded us that sometimes it's the villain who changes everything. This is Cinema Fever. Stay inspired, stay cinematic.